Don't you dare touch that crystal glass with those filthy hands, Leo. Linda's voice sliced through the dining room air, sharper than the silver knife she was using to cut the turkey. The conversation stopped dead. 20 guests froze. My grandson, Leo, stood at the entrance of the lavish dining hall, still wearing his faded gray work jacket. There was a smear of black motor oil on his cheek, and his boots were scuffed. He looked like a rugged shadow in a room full of silk dresses and tailored suits. I just came from the garage, Aunt Linda, Leo said quietly, his voice steady but tired. Grandma's car needed a new alternator. I wanted to fix it before the snow hit. Oh, spare us the blue-collar sob story, Robert, my eldest son, laughed as he swirled his expensive red wine. He didn't even look at me. We're celebrating Kevin's acceptance into the master's program at Yale. We don't need a college dropout reminding us of what failure looks like. Laughter rippled across the mahogany table. It was a cruel, polite sound. Kevin, sitting smugly in his pristine navy blazer, smirked at his cousin. It's okay, Dad. Someone has to change our tires, right? Leo is just fulfilling his destiny. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful rhythm that had nothing to do with my age. I looked at Leo. He didn't argue. He just lowered his eyes, accepting the humiliation as if it were his daily bread. He had driven 3 hours to fix my car for free, and this was his welcome. That is enough. I slammed my hand on the table. The heavy silverware clattered. The room went silent again, but this time, it was out of shock, not awkwardness. I pushed myself up from the chair, my legs trembling. Mother, sit down, you're making a scene, Robert hissed, his face flushing red. A scene? I choked out, my voice shaking with a rage I had suppressed for years. You sit in this big house eating this expensive food, mocking the only boy who has never asked me for a dime. Kevin hasn't visited me in 2 years unless it was to ask for a check. But Leo fixes my roof. Leo mows my lawn. And you call him a failure? He's a grease monkey, Mom. He quit school. Linda shrieked, standing up. He's an embarrassment to this family. He is the only man in this family. I screamed back. Suddenly a jagged bolt of pain shot through my left arm, crushing my chest like a vice. The room tilted violently. The chandelier above spun into a blur of crystals. Grandma, that was the last thing I heard, Leo's terrified voice cutting through the noise. Not Robert. Not Kevin. Leo. As the floor rushed up to meet me, I saw him sprinting past the stunned guests, knocking over a chair to get to me. Then, everything went black. The antiseptic smell of the hospital room was the first thing that hit me. It smelled like bleach and bad news. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they were weighted down with lead. I was alive, but barely. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor was the only thing proving I was still in this world. Then, I heard voices. Angry, hushed whispers coming from the hallway, just outside my open door. It's $100,000, Robert. 100,000. That was Linda. Her voice wasn't filled with worry, it was filled with indignation, as if she had just been overcharged for a salad at a country club. Did you hear what Dr. Evans said? The insurance won't cover the valve replacement because they're classifying it as an elective upgrade due to her age. It's out of pocket. Keep your voice down, Robert hissed, though he sounded just as panicked. I know what he said. I'm looking at the paperwork right now. I managed to crack my eyes open a sliver. Through the gap in the door, I could see my son pacing back and forth under the harsh fluorescent lights. He was still wearing his expensive suit from dinner, but now it looked rumpled. He wasn't asking if I was going to survive. He was staring at a financial document like it was a death sentence for his bank account, not his mother. We can't pay this, Robert said, running a hand through his thinning hair. All our cash is tied up in the new investment property in Sarasota, and we just paid Kevin's tuition for the semester. We are illiquid, Linda. So what? We just let her die? Linda asked, though the tone suggested she was weighing the options. No, of course not, Robert snapped, but then he paused. The silence that followed was more painful than the heart attack. But, look at her, Linda. She's 72. Even with the surgery, the doctor said recovery is a long road. Maybe it's irresponsible to throw good money after bad. We have to be realistic. Tears welled up in my eyes, hot and stinging. My own son was calculating my return on investment. There has to be another way, Linda said, tapping her long fingernails against her purse. What about her assets? She's sitting on that house. It's prime real estate. If we sell it, we could cover the medical bills and have plenty left over for better care facilities. A nursing home, Robert murmured, nodding slowly. The state-funded ones aren't that bad. If we liquidate the house quickly. Yes, that solves the liquidity problem. I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and tell them that my home was not just an asset to be liquidated. It was where I raised him. It was where my husband died. But my body wouldn't obey. I was trapped in the bed, a silent witness to their greed. In the corner of my vision, I saw a shadow move inside the room. Leo. He was sitting in the uncomfortable plastic chair by the window, his head in his hands. He hadn't left. He looked up as Robert and Linda walked into the room, their faces composed into masks of fake sympathy. Leo, Robert said, his voice cold and authoritative. Go home. We need to discuss adult matters with your grandmother when she wakes up. This doesn't concern you. Leo didn't move. He just stared at his uncle, his eyes dark and unreadable. The next morning brought no relief, only a cold, gray light filtering through the blinds of the private hospital suite. Robert insisted on a private room, not for my comfort, but because he didn't want the public overhearing our family business. I was propped up on pillows, feeling weaker than I ever had in my life. The doctor had come and gone, leaving behind a terrifying ultimatum: surgery within 48 hours, or my heart would simply give up. Robert sat on the edge of my bed, holding a tablet. Linda stood by the window, examining her manicure, looking bored. Mom, we need to be practical, Robert started, his voice dripping with that condescending patience he used on difficult clients. Dr. Evans needs the deposit by noon to book the OR, and as we discussed, cash is tight. I have some savings, I whispered, my voice raspy, in the credit union. It's not enough, Mom, it's barely a drop in the bucket, Robert sighed, swiping on his tablet screen. He turned it toward me. It showed a listing. My house. The market is hot right now. I made a few calls this morning. I have an investor ready to make an all-cash offer, as is, no inspections. My breath hitched. Sell my house? But Robert, that's all I have left of your father. The rose garden, the workshop. The stairs are a death trap, Linda cut in sharply, turning around. You can't live there alone anymore, Clara. Look at you. You can't even sit up without help. Do you want to die alone at the bottom of those stairs? We're doing this for you, Robert added, placing a heavy hand on my knee. With the money from the sale, we pay for the surgery, and we move you into Golden Horizon. It's a assisted living community. Very efficient. You won't have to worry about maintenance or taxes ever again. A nursing home, I corrected him, tears spilling onto my cheeks. You want to put me in a home? It's better than being a burden, Linda snapped, then quickly softened her tone when Robert shot her a glare. I mean, it's better than worrying us sick every day. I looked around the room, desperate for an ally. Where is Leo? He was here last night. Robert stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. Leo? I sent him away. He was just cluttering up the room, Mom. He has no money, no job, and honestly, having a dropout hovering around wasn't helping your stress levels. He's probably back in his garage playing with scrap metal. He can't help you. We are the ones here solving the problem. The lie was smooth, practiced. They were stripping me of everything, my home, my dignity, and my grandson. They made me feel small, useless, and incredibly expensive. I don't know, I stammered. I'll have the lawyer bring the papers this afternoon, Robert said, checking his watch. It's the only way to save your life, Mom. Don't be selfish. Selfish, the word echoed in the silent room as they walked out, leaving me alone with the wilting flowers on the bedside table. The hours dragged on like a slow, painful death. The luxury suite Robert had insisted on was spacious, with a view of the Seattle skyline, but to me, it felt like a high-end prison cell. The beige leather armchairs were empty. The large flat-screen TV was muted, flashing images of a cheerful cooking show that felt like a mockery of my situation. I stared at the small, outdated cell phone lying on the bedside table. My fingers, trembling and bruised from the IV lines, hovered over the speed dial 1 button. Leo. I pressed it, for the 10th time in an hour. Hey, this is Leo. I can't get to the phone right now. Leave a message or text me if it's urgent. The voicemail beeped. I didn't leave a message. What could I say? Please come back? Don't let them sell my house? I hung up, a hollow ache spreading in my chest that had nothing to do with my blocked arteries. Why wasn't he answering? Was Robert right? Did he see the medical bills, panic, and run back to his chaotic, responsibility-free life? The doubt was a poison, slow and effective. The heavy oak door swung open. Robert walked in, smelling of expensive espresso and rain. He shook his umbrella out in the hallway before entering, ensuring no water dripped on the polished floor. Still trying to call him? Robert asked, glancing at the phone in my hand. His tone wasn't mocking anymore. It was pitying. The kind of pity you give a child who still believes in Santa Claus. Mom, I told you. I saw his truck pull out of the lot 3 hours ago. He didn't even look back. He wouldn't just leave, I whispered, though my voice lacked conviction. He's a good boy. He's a boy who dropped out of college because he couldn't handle the pressure, Robert said, sitting down and crossing his legs. He smoothed the crease in his trousers. And this is real pressure, life and death pressure. It's too much for someone like him. He's probably halfway to Portland by now, hiding out until the scary part is over. He leaned forward, his face serious. I'm the one who stayed, Mom. I'm the one dealing with the doctors. I'm the one talking to the bank. I know I'm hard on you sometimes, but I'm the only one actually doing anything to save you. I looked at my son. He was selfish, yes. He was arrogant, yes. But he was here. And Leo was gone. The silence from my phone was deafening. Maybe you're right, I said, the fight draining out of me along with my tears. I turned my head toward the window. The rain was streaking against the glass, blurring the world outside. I am right, Robert said softly. Now get some rest. The lawyer will be here soon. Let's just get this over with so you can heal. I closed my eyes. I felt small, discarded, and foolish. The alliance I thought I had with my grandson was just a fantasy of a lonely old woman. I was ready to sign. I was ready to give up. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, arrived 20 minutes later. He looked exactly like the type of man Robert admired. A charcoal pinstripe suit that cost more than my first car, slicked back hair, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He carried a leather briefcase that smelled of rich tanning oil, placing it on the rolling hospital table with a heavy thud. Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice smooth and professional. I'm sorry we have to meet under such urgent circumstances. But Robert tells me time is of the essence. He clicked open the briefcase. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. He pulled out a thick stack of documents, the edges crisp and sharp. He fanned them out on the table, pointing to several yellow sticky notes marked, "Sign here." This is a standard irrevocable power of attorney, Sterling explained, uncapping a heavy black fountain pen. He held it out to me. It grants Robert full authority to liquidate your assets, specifically the property on Elm Street, to cover your medical liabilities and future care. I stared at the bold letters at the top of the page. Irrevocable. That meant once I signed, I couldn't take it back. I would be a guest in my own life, dependent entirely on Robert's generosity. Is this the only way? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I looked at Robert. He was standing at the foot of the bed, his arms crossed, his leg bouncing nervously. Mom, please, Robert snapped, his patience evaporating. We've been over this. Dr. Evans is waiting for the confirmation of funds. Do you want the surgery or not? It feels like I'm signing my life away, I murmured. My hand trembled as I reached for the pen. It felt cold and heavy like a weapon. You're signing for your survival, Linda chimed in from the couch, not even looking up from a magazine. Don't be dramatic, Clara. It's just paperwork. We're handling the hard part for you. I looked at the document again. The words swam before my blurry eyes. Transfer of deed. Sale authorization. Memories of that house flashed through my mind. Arthur building the porch swing, Leo taking his first steps in the living room, the Christmas dinners, the laughter. Robert was asking me to trade my memories for a beating heart, but without that home, I wasn't sure my heart was worth saving. Mrs. Vance? The lawyer nudged the paper closer. Right next to the X, please. Robert stepped forward, looming over the bed. Sign it, Mom. Now, before the bank closes. The pressure was suffocating. The air in the luxury suite felt thin. I was an old woman, sick and alone, surrounded by people who saw me as a problem to be solved, an asset to be stripped. I had no fight left. Leo wasn't coming. I took a shaky breath, gripped the pen, and lowered the nib to the paper. The black ink began to bleed into the white fiber, forming the first curve of my name. C. I was 1 second away from losing everything. Slam! The heavy oak door didn't just open. It rebounded off the doorstop with a violence that made the crystal vase on the windowsill rattle. The sound was so loud, so abrupt, that my hand jerked, sending a jagged streak of black ink across the signature line. I looked up, heart pounding. Leo stood in the doorway. He was a mess. His gray hoodie was soaked dark with rain, clinging to his broad shoulders. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and he was breathing hard, as if he had run up all 6 flights of stairs instead of taking the elevator. In his right hand, he gripped the strap of a battered, oil-stained canvas duffel bag. "Don't sign that," Leo said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had a depth to it that filled the room, instantly silencing the hum of the medical equipment. "Leo?" I breathed, the pen slipping from my numb fingers onto the crisp, white sheets. Robert recovered from his shock first, his face twisted into a sneer of pure disgust. He took a step toward his nephew, blocking Leo's path to my bed like a bouncer at an exclusive club. "You have some nerve showing up here like that," Robert spat, gesturing at Leo's muddy boots, which were leaving dark prints on the pristine tiled floor. "Look at you. You look like a vagrant. We are in the middle of a serious legal proceeding. Get out before I call security," I said. Leo repeated, ignoring his uncle completely, his eyes locked on mine. "Don't sign the paper, Grandma." "Oh, for God's sake," Linda groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. "He's probably here to beg for gas money to get back to his trailer. Robert, just give him $20 and make him leave. The smell of wet dog is giving me a migraine." Leo didn't even blink at the insult. He walked straight toward Robert. For a second, I thought he was going to hit him. Robert must have thought so too, because he flinched and took a step back, his courage failing him when faced with someone who actually worked with his hands for a living. Leo brushed past him, marching straight to the bedside table. He looked at the lawyer, Mr. Sterling. The lawyer, sensing the shift in the room's energy, instinctively pulled the papers closer to his chest. "Who is this young man?" Mr. Sterling asked, looking nervously at Robert. "Nobody," Robert snarled, regaining his composure. "Just a college dropout who thinks he knows better than the adults in the room. Leo, your grandmother needs surgery. Unless you have a medical degree or a bank vault in that dirty bag of yours, you are killing her by wasting our time." Leo looked down at me. His eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, but they were soft. He reached out and gently picked up the heavy black pen from the sheets. He capped it with a decisive click and tossed it into the trash can in the corner. Then he lifted the heavy canvas bag and dropped it onto the glass-topped coffee table. Thud. The sound was heavy, dense, and solid. It wasn't the sound of clothes or tools. It was the sound of something incredibly compact and substantial. "I don't have a medical degree," Leo said, unzipping the bag slowly, "but I think this will cover the deposit." The zipper rasped loudly in the silence, peeling back the canvas to reveal the contents. It wasn't tools. It wasn't dirty laundry. Stacked inside, in neat, tight rows, were bricks of cash. $100 bills, bound in fresh paper bank straps, filling the bag almost to the brim. The sheer volume of it was staggering. In the harsh fluorescent light of the hospital suite, the money looked surreal, like a prop from a movie, sitting casually on the glass table next to a bowl of decorative potpourri. Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes, previously bored and dismissive, were now wide and fixated on the dirty bag with a look of hungry fascination. Mr. Sterling, the lawyer, actually took a step back, adjusting his glasses as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Robert was the first to speak, but his voice was high and cracked. "What? What is this?" $100,000. Leo said calmly. He reached into the bag, grabbed a stack, and tossed it onto the table. It landed with a solid slap, plus a little extra for the post-op care. You robbed a bank?" Robert stammered, his face turning a pale, sickly shade of gray. He pointed a shaking finger at his nephew. "Or drugs? Is this drug money? Oh my God, you're dealing, I knew it. You drop out of school, disappear into that garage, and now you show up with a bag of dirty cash?" "It's not dirty, Uncle Robert," Leo said, his voice ice cold. "It's untaxed because I haven't filed for this quarter yet, but it's clean. And it's mine." "Liar," Robert shouted, looking around frantically as if expecting the police to burst in. "Mr. Sterling, don't touch it. It's evidence. He's going to drag this whole family into a criminal investigation. Leo ignored him completely. He turned to the lawyer. Sir, you can count it if you want, or you can take it down to the billing department right now and get a receipt. Either way, my grandmother is getting that surgery. Today. Mr. Sterling looked at the money, then at Robert, then back at the money. The professional greed in his eyes won out. He reached out and tentatively touched a stack. Cash is legal tender, Mr. Vance. If the hospital accepts it, the surgery proceeds. And the house? Leo asked, pivoting to face the bedside table. The house is, well, the sale was contingent on the need for funds, the lawyer mumbled. Leo didn't wait for a longer explanation. He reached over to the rolling table where the irrevocable power of attorney lay, the ink from my botched signature still wet. With a swift, violent motion, Leo snatched the document up. He held it in front of Robert's face for a second, just long enough for his uncle to see the bold title. And then he ripped it. Once. Twice. 3 times. Rip, rip. The sound was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. It sounded like chains breaking. Leo let the confetti of legal paper rain down onto the polished floor at Robert's feet. The house is off the market, Leo declared, crossing his arms. Now, get out. I'm calling the police. Robert shrieked, fumbling for his phone. His face was purple with rage. You little punk, you think you can walk in here with a bag of cartel money and pay for heart surgery? You're gonna jail, and I'm not spending a dime on your bail. Call them, Leo said, leaning against the wall, crossing his arms over his wet hoodie. He looked bored. But you might want to wait 2 minutes. For what? For your accomplices to show up? Linda sneered, clutching her pearls. I knew it. I always said there was something shady about him living in that warehouse district. Before Robert could dial, there was a polite but firm knock on the open door. A man stepped in. He was older, perhaps in his 50s, wearing a bespoke 3-piece suit that made Robert's off-the-rack blazer look like a costume. On his wrist, a platinum watch glinted under the hospital lights, understated, but worth more than Robert's car. Mr. Vance? The stranger asked, looking around the room. Yes, that's me. Robert stepped forward, straightening his tie, assuming the man was a detective or a hospital administrator. Thank God you're here. My nephew has just brought illicit funds into this facility. I want to go on record stating I have no part in this. The man frowned, looking at Robert with mild confusion. Then, his eyes landed on Leo. His face lit up with a warm smile. Leo, there you are, the man said, bypassing Robert completely, to shake Leo's grease-stained hand. You ran out of the closing meeting so fast you left your copy of the contract. Sorry, Marcus, Leo said, sounding apologetic. Family emergency. I had to liquidate the signing bonus immediately. Thanks for authorizing the cash withdrawal on such short notice. Contract? Robert whispered, his arm dropping to his side. What contract? The man turned to Robert, his expression cooling. I'm Marcus Thorne, CEO of Nexus Logistics, and you must be the uncle Leo told me about. The one who thinks? What was it? That Leo is a failure? Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. Mr. Vance, your nephew didn't drop out because he was failing. He left college because his startup was growing too fast to manage from a dorm room. That grease monkey work you mocked? He was personally testing his automated fleet management software in 500 trucks across the state. The room went dead silent. I stared at my grandson. The boy who fixed my toaster. The boy who came over on Sundays to mow the lawn. Nexus just acquired Leo's software company this morning, Marcus continued, enjoying the look on Robert's face. That cash on the table? That's just the upfront signing bonus. The full buyout is, well, let's just say Leo is currently the liquidity in this room. Linda's jaw literally dropped. She looked from the dirty duffel bag to Leo, her eyes suddenly calculating. Wait, you mean Leo is rich? Leo is a brilliant engineer. Marcus corrected her sharply. And he's a young man of incredible character. He almost walked away from a multi-million-dollar deal today because he heard his grandmother was in trouble. I looked at Leo, tears streaming down my face again. But this time, they weren't from fear. They were from pride so fierce it almost burst my heart. You built a company? I whispered. Leo shrugged, finally smiling, a boyish, shy smile. I just like fixing things, Grandma, and I wasn't going to let them break you. Robert sank into the armchair, defeated. The narrative he had built for years, the successful son versus the loser nephew, had just shattered into a million pieces. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It was sickening to watch. The air, previously thick with contempt, was now suffocating with desperation. Linda was the first to move. She smoothed her dress, a nervous smile plastered across her face, and took a hesitant step toward Leo. "Oh, Leo, honey," she cooed, her voice trembling with artificial sweetness. "We were just worried about you. You know how hard your uncle pushes people he sees potential in. We always knew you were special, didn't we, Robert?" She elbowed her husband hard in the ribs. Robert blinked, shaking off his stupor. He forced a stiff, painful smile. "Right, yes, tough love, Leo. That's all it was. We just wanted you to apply yourself." He chuckled nervously, adjusting his tie. "And look at this. A tech CEO. Kevin will be thrilled. You know he's studying business. Maybe he could intern for you? Keep it in the family?" I felt bile rise in my throat. 10 minutes ago, I was a burden to be discarded. Now that there was money in the room, we were suddenly a family again. Leo didn't smile. He looked at Linda, then at Robert, his expression unreadable. He walked over to the bedside table, picked up the torn pieces of the power of attorney, and crumpled them into a ball. "Kevin," Leo said quietly, "spent the last 3 years making fun of my clothes and my truck. And you, Uncle Robert, spent the last hour trying to sell Grandma's house out from under her. That was for her own good." Robert protested, though his voice lacked its usual booming authority. "She needs care. She can't afford that house." "She can now," Leo said. He turned to Mr. Sterling, the lawyer who was still staring at the cash. "Mr. Sterling, you represent the estate, correct?" Well, yes," the lawyer stammered, sensing where the power now lay. "Technically, I represent Mrs. Vance's interests." "Good," Leo nodded. "Then you can draft a new document right now, a revocation of power of attorney. Robert is to have no legal authority over my grandmother's assets, health decisions, or property, effective immediately." "Now wait a minute." Robert stepped forward, his face flushing red again. "You can't do that. I'm her son. And I'm the one paying the bills." Leo cut him off, his voice sharpening like a blade. "And since you're so concerned about liquidity, Robert, let's talk about yours. I did a little digging before I came here. You're 3 months behind on your own mortgage. You weren't selling Grandma's house to pay for her surgery. You were selling it to pay off your gambling debts in Vegas." The room went deadly silent. I gasped, looking at my son. Robert turned pale, his eyes darting to Linda, who looked like she had just been slapped. "Is that true?" Linda whispered, horror dawning on her face. "You told me the business was just slow." "Get out," Leo said, pointing to the door. "Both of you. Grandma needs to rest before her surgery. If I see either of you here again, or if you step foot on her property, I'll hire the best legal team in Seattle to audit every financial move you've made in the last 10 years. Robert opened his mouth to argue, but looked at Marcus Thorne standing silently by the door, then at the cold determination in Leo's eyes. He knew he had lost. Without a word to me, Robert grabbed his coat and hurried out. Linda followed, sobbing into her hands, her dreams of an inheritance evaporating into the sterile hospital air. For the first time in years, the room felt clean. The early spring sun felt warm on my face, a sensation I honestly hadn't expected to live long enough to enjoy. I sat on the newly refinished front porch, wrapping my hands around a steaming mug of chamomile tea. The air smelled of wet earth and blooming hyacinths, the scent of life returning. My chest still ached sometimes when it rained, a lingering reminder of the triple bypass surgery. But my heart beat with a steady, strong rhythm that felt 10 years younger. "Grandma, you're not supposed to be lifting that teapot," a voice called out from the driveway. I smiled, watching Leo emerge from under the hood of his old pickup truck. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag, wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was still the struggling mechanic everyone mocked last Thanksgiving. You wouldn't guess that Forbes had just listed him as one of the state's most promising young tech innovators. "I'm recovering, Leo, not invalid," I teased as he jogged up the steps. "Besides, Dr. Evans said I need moderate activity. Pouring tea counts." Leo laughed, that deep, genuine laugh that always made the house feel fuller. He sat down on the railing, which he had reinforced himself last week, despite having enough money to hire a construction crew to rebuild the entire house. "How are things at the office?" I asked. "Did you fire anyone today?" "No firing," he grinned, taking a cookie from the plate. "But I did hire someone. Remember Cousin Kevin?" I paused, the teacup halting halfway to my mouth. "Robert's boy?" "Yeah, he called me. Begged for an internship. Said his dad is broke after the bank foreclosed on their Sarasota condo," Leo said, his expression serious but not malicious. "I gave him a job in the mailroom, minimum wage. Told him if he works hard, maybe in a few years he can move up to logistics." I shook my head, marveling at the boy's grace. After everything Robert and Linda had said, Leo was still offering them a ladder, just not a free ride on an elevator. Robert and Linda hadn't called me since that day in the hospital. The shame, I supposed, was heavier than their greed. And honestly, the silence was peaceful. "You're a better man than they deserve, Leo," I said softly. Leo hopped off the railing and sat next to me on the sturdy oak swing. He put his arm around my shoulders, pulling me into a gentle side hug. He smelled of engine oil and expensive cologne, a strange mix that suited him perfectly. "I just invested in what mattered, Grandma," he said, looking out over the garden where the daffodils were pushing through the soil. "You believed in me when I was just a dropout tinkering in a garage. You gave me the basement to build my first server when Mom died. That was the seed capital. Paying your hospital bill? That was just paying dividends." I leaned my head against his shoulder, listening to the birds singing in the old maple tree, the tree Robert had wanted to cut down to increase the property value. "I'm glad we didn't sell the house," I whispered. "Me too," Leo squeezed my shoulder. "It's a good house, it just needed a little heart repair. Kind of like you." We sat there swinging gently as the sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows across the lawn. I wasn't a rich woman in the eyes of the bank, and I didn't have a big family anymore. But sitting there, safe in my own home, protected by the boy who had become a king, I knew I was the wealthiest woman in the world. The sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the sky painted in soft hues of violet and indigo. Leo went inside to start a fire in the hearth, the warm glow flickering through the living room window. Sitting there in the twilight, I realized that the greatest tragedy wasn't my heart attack or the empty bank account. It was my own son's blindness. Robert spent his life chasing titles and status, convinced that the measure of a man is the price of his suit. But he forgot that while money can buy a house, it cannot buy a home. Leo, with his grease-stained hands and college dropout status, taught us all a lesson I will carry to my grave. True loyalty is the only currency that never devalues. To anyone feeling overlooked or underestimated today, keep building in silence. Your character is your capital, and your duffel bag moment is coming. As I stood up to head inside, I glanced at the house across the street. It reminded me of my friend, Martha. She passed away last year, leaving behind a dusty old piano that everyone thought was trash. But what her greedy children didn't know was that she had hidden something inside that piano worth millions. If you think my victory was satisfying, you have to hear what happened to them. Click right here to witness another incredible moment of justice served.